want to talk about network security groups and the concept of application security groups, and then we'll look at creating some security groups. So to begin with, a network security group is a set of IP filter rules. Now, if you didn't know this, pretty much anything that can handle traffic inbound or outbound, such as a network adapter card or routing or router, all of those things can handle what is called IP filtering. What is IP filtering? IP filtering is where you decide to either allow or block traffic based on a source or a destination, or you want to block based on port, or you want to block based on a protocol. Now, a lot of people think that that's just a firewall that does that, but no, yes, I should say firewalls can do that, but no, firewalls are not the only things that can handle IP filtering. Pretty much anything in TCP/IP could technically do IP filtering if it allows traffic to flow in and out of it. Now, in Azure, the way that we control IP filtering without involving a firewall or any of that is through something known as an NSG or a ASG. Now, NSG is a network security group, and it is a resource that we can create, and we can place this resource on one of two things. We can place it on a subnet, individual subnet, or we could place it on a virtual NIC directly. Okay, so if I wanted to stop traffic flowing in and out of a specific subnet, or allow certain types of traffic to flow in and out of a subnet, I could use this. I could place the NSG on a specific subnet. Okay, if I wanted to allow traffic to flow in and out of a specific NIC, I could place it on a virtual NIC. That is the idea of a NSG. Now, one other thing of note here, if I place an NSG on a subnet and I allow something, and I place an NSG on a virtual NIC and I deny something. So for example, let's say that I allow port 80, which is HTTP traffic, to flow into the subnet, but then I deny port 80 traffic onto this VM. Well, traffic trying to flow into port 80 into this VM through this NSG is going to get blocked. So my point is that when you think in regards to traffic flowing into something, the most restrictive NSG will win in a conflict. If traffic is flowing into here and it's saying, okay, it's okay to let that traffic in, and then the traffic is trying to get into this VM because maybe that's a web server, and then the NSG that's attached to this vNIC says no, well, it's going to get blocked. On the flip side, if you denied the traffic here and allowed the traffic here, then it would have gotten blocked when it got to this NSG. Okay, so the thing to understand is the most restrictive NSG applies. That's what you're going to get if there's ever a conflict between having multiple NSGs. Now, I'll also tell you that Microsoft's rule of thumb on this is don't have a lot of security groups. Don't have a lot of NSGs. Don't have a lot of ASGs. Minimize the amount that you've got as much as possible, because it ends up, you end up running into problems where you got so many of these things. Like, a lot of people want to place a different NSG on every one of their virtual NICs and on every one of their subnets, and then they get mixed up on what's allowing what, and it ends up not working. So you want to try to minimize this as much as you can. Now, the other issue you run into is that some virtual machines may have multiple NICs, multiple vNICs. Okay, so let's say I've got a virtual machine that has 2 virtual NICs on it. Okay, and you want to have an NSG that's going to control traffic on this VM, but maybe instead of the old way you would have had to have done is you would have, if you wanted to allow port 80 on both vNICs, you'd either have to place it on the whole subnet, or you'd have to create a separate NSG for each vNIC. So the way that we get around that problem now is we use what's called an ASG. An ASG is an application security group, and what you can do with an ASG is you can associate it to the whole VM. And you can say allow port 80 or port 443 or port 3389 on the whole VM. That'll allow it on all the NICs. So if you had a lot of NICs and you were doing what's called NIC teaming, you wouldn't have to deal with setting up an NSG for each individual one. Okay, so that's the idea of an application security group. All right, now let's jump in and let's look into creating a network security group and application security group. Here I am on portal.azure.com. I'm going to click the menu button here. We're going to go to resource groups, and we'll pull up vNet demo RG, and I'm going to click to create. All right, and then we're just going to search for network security group. All right, so there is the resource. We're going to click create and create a network security group. All right, and from there we'll give it a name. Just going to call it NSG demo East US. Click review and create, and we're going to click to create. Now while this is getting created, I want to go back and I want to go to my resource groups, and I want to look at this VM demo resource group, because I've got a virtual machine in it that let me find a VM destination. Sorry, the VM destination resource group. I've got a virtual machine called Win Server. Okay, and that server has remote desktop on it, which allows me to remote into the server by its IP address. Well, there is an NSG right here called basic NSG vNIC2 that's associated with this vNIC. How do I know that? I can click on the vNIC, and you can click on network security group, and you can see that that's what's attached to it. So if we go to that, we can look at this, and we can see these rules have been defined on this NSG. I want to look at these rules with you for a second, and then we'll go and we'll define some on the new NSG that we just created. So the first rule that's attached to this NSG is this RDP rule. And it's basically for inbound rule, and it says it's going to basically allow RDP, remote desktop, on 3389. That's the port number that RDP uses. It's a TCP-based protocol, source any, destination any. So that basically means that any source, any destination, traffic trying to flow into whatever this NSG is connected to, it's going to allow port 3389. Okay, that's what that's basically saying. All right, now what are these other rules? This rule says allow VNet inbound. That means any VNet, as long as there's connectivity with a peering or something like that, any VNet can talk through this NSG. That's what this is saying. And then you've got allow Azure load balancer. Any load balancer in Azure can talk through this NSG. So these are some built-in rules. And then finally you have what's called the deny all rule. Okay, now the way that NSG rules work is they go in order of priority, and the lower the number, the higher the priority. So the very first rule that applies to this traffic is the one you get. It does not mix any of these together. The very first rule that applies to the traffic as it flows in is the one you get. All right, so essentially that means that I could have a rule below this that denies RDP. Watch this. If I go right here to inbound rules and I click add, all right, and I say source any for whatever source port, we'll say 3389, okay, destination any, and I'm going to say TCP, and I'm going to do priority 310, and we're going to say deny RDP is going to be the name of it, and I'm going to say deny. I'm going to hit add, all right. You would not really ever do this. It wouldn't make any sense to it. But my point is to show you that that this deny rule is doing absolutely nothing right now. It is doing absolutely nothing, because all traffic flowing in through this NSG would get this rule right here. The very first rule that applies to traffic is the one you get. Okay, and the higher the priority, okay, the higher the priority, the lower the number, the higher the priority is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so if I go here and I change this priority to 299 and I hit save, all right, guess what's going to happen now? All RDP traffic will always be denied, okay, at this point. any traffic interacting with this NSG on port 3389 is going to get denied. Okay, so the first rule that applies is the one you get. This does not go the most restrictive. Now, when does most restrictive occur? That occurs when you have multiple NSGs. When traffic has to flow through multiple NSGs, the most restrictive one is the one you end up getting. So if you've got traffic trying to flow through a virtual subnet that has an NSG attached to it, and it says go ahead and let the traffic through, and then you got another NSG attached to a vNIC, and the traffic is trying to get into that vNIC, but then that vNIC says deny, well, guess what? Traffic is denied. But when you're talking about an individual an individual NSG, it's the lower the number, the higher the priority. The first rule you get is the one you get. So it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to do this. I just wanted to show you, you wouldn't want to have both of these rules in here. I just wanted to show you that what would happen if you did. So ultimately, though, the big thing of note here to remember, let's just delete this rule because we don't need it. The big thing of note here, though, is that if you don't have an allow rule that says to allow something, then you will eventually get denied. Okay, you will get denied, completely denied. All right, and so if there's not an allow rule that says let something in, then you end up getting the deny rule. All right, that's called the implicit deny, or what we call the default deny rule. The default deny rule should always be at the bottom. It should have the lowest priority. Of course, sometimes people will ask me, they'll say, well, then do we ever need to have a deny rule if all we're going to do is allow? And the answer to that question is yes. You can do a deny rule if you ever want to explicitly deny something. For example, right now I'm allowing any RDP traffic. But what if I want to deny RDP traffic for a specific IP address? I could go in here and I could say, well, you know, source will say, I want to deny this specific IP address on the internet, okay, the ability to talk to RDP. Deny, let's say that's a hacker, all right? Who knows? Maybe it's a hacker, all right? Oh, that's a port number, sorry. Let's put the port number there. And then this is going to be a hacker, all right? We'll put that down here. Hacker address, okay? And we're going to do port 299 is going to be our priority. So then we're going to say add. So yes, there's a reason for having a deny on there. You want to deny this hacker address, but you want to allow everything else. Okay, that's the idea of doing. That's called an explicit deny. You are explicitly denying something, as opposed to what we call an implicit deny, which means just deny it if there's not an allow. So at this point, everybody would be able to communicate with RDP except this address. That is the idea there. So this is for inbound security rules, and then you have outbound security rules. All right, so let's go back now to our NSG that we created. We'll go back over to our resource group called vNet Demo RG, and our NSG has been created called NSG Demo. So let's click on that, and you'll see it's got the same default rules, but it doesn't have the RDP rule that maybe we want to allow. So I could go here to inbound, I could say add, and we'd say, okay, source any, source port range, star just means any, destination any, and then we could specify a specific service, or we can just put the port number in there we want, 3389 in this case, which is a TCP-based rule. We're going to say allow, we're going to say priority, we'll just leave it set to 100, and we're going to say allow RDP, okay, on 3389, and we will click add. Now, why does it have a warning message there? The reason it has a warning message there is this little message here. RDP port 3389 is exposed to the internet. This is only recommended for testing. For production environments, we recommend using a VPN or private connection. So what they're telling you is it's okay to allow RDP temporarily for testing if you're going to allow something to connect into a virtual machine like I've done. But ultimately, there are better ways. You can use what's called a bastion. You can use a VPN gateway. You can use ExpressRoute if you're dealing with on-premise needing to connect to it. There's various other ways, and I'm not getting into right now, but I wanted to show you the idea or the concept there of allowing RDP directly through this NSG. So now that I've set my NSG up, and of course I could do outbound, allowing traffic to flow out. It's the same concept really. It's just you're dealing with traffic going out. You could then apply it to whatever you want. There's two things you can apply it to. You can apply it to a network interface, or you can apply it to a subnet. So if I want to apply this to a subnet, I just click this, and I'm going to click Associate. And then I would choose whatever subnet I want, like vNet 2 here, and we'll say subnet 2A, and we'll click OK. So now we've applied this NSG to that subnet. And yes, you can apply NSG to multiple subnets. Okay, so that's not a problem. All right, so that is how we can configure NSGs in Azure. Now, what about ASG? Okay, so it's real simple. All I got to do, go to my resource groups. Let's go to vNet demo RG. We'll go ahead and click Create, and then we're just going to do a search for Application Security Group. Put that in. All right, search for that. There's the resource right there. We'll click Create Application Security Group. All right, we'll give it a name. I'm going to call it App Security Group Demo. We'll do East US, and then review and create. And we'll go ahead and let it create. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to click my menu here, and we'll go to Virtual Machines. All right, and I've got a virtual machine called WinServer1. I'm going to select on WinServer1 here. We're going to go to the networking blade. All right, and then we're going to click on Application Security Groups, and we're going to click Configure the Application Security Group. We're going to select the Application Security Group we have just created, and we're going to click Save. All right, so it's now going through the process of applying that Application Security Group. So then from there, I've got that Application Security Group applied. Now I'll go over here to where it says Inbound Port Rules, and I'm going to click Add an Inbound Port Rule. Source, except this time I'm going to choose Application Security Group. All right, which of course is this one right here that's been attached. You could specify your port range. All right, I'll do 8080. Well, you know what? Let's do 443. We'll say any, allow, set the priority, give it a name. I'll just leave the default name. I'm going to click Add. All right, and it's now creating the security rule. So that'll take just a moment before it shows up. All right, so it's been created successfully now. All right, and we've applied that rule. All right, so there it is right there. You can see that it's attached to the Application Security Group. So this is now applied, and I could apply this Application Security Group in multiple places. And the great thing about this is it's not just going to be attached to a specific VNIC. It can be assigned to all VNICs that are on this device, as opposed to just individual VNICs. The other thing of note is one thing that's different about application security groups versus NSGs is when you go and you look at an NSG, like let's go to our resource group, let's go down here to the vNIC demo RG, you can see the NSG right here, and you can look at the inbound, outbound rules. Now, if we go back and we look at the ASG, the App Security Group, it doesn't have those rules. That's because you actually have to go to the resources where the application security group is applied and set the rules there, and they're applied to that application security group. So you don't actually set the rules directly on the application security group like you do in NSG. All right. But hopefully that now helps you understand the concepts behind NSGs and ASGs. NSGs are still used a lot more often than ASGs, but the idea of an ASG is to try to account for the fact that your services may have multiple vNICs and things like that attached to it. Hey, this is John Christopher. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want you to know that I'm trying really hard to grow this channel, so I hope you'll give me a like and a subscribe. Also, if you'll check the description in this video, I've got a link for you that can show you how you can get access to all my different courses. I have lots of different Microsoft certification courses that'll help you pass your exam. All right, thanks a lot for watching the video, and I hope to see you again.